Kia ora everyone, welcome back to the Eyeview Ethnic Podcast. Today we are super lucky to have Suveen here with us today. How are you?
Kia ora, yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Kia ora, welcome. Now Suveen, for everyone who doesn't know you, could you just give us a little introduction, a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So, kia ora everybody, ko Suveen Sanis Walgampola toku ingoa, ko Mangawhau te Monga. So Mangawhau is the mountain that grounds me. In terms of, because I grew up within the Mount Eden, Remuera area, went to Auckland Grammar. Awesome. And I'd say Waitemata is the body of water that replenishes my Wairoa. And I'm originally born in Sri Lanka. And that's where my family's from. So I immigrated to Aotearoa very young. And went to school here. And now talking about a bit of the mahi that I do and whatnot.
Exactly. Oh, good bridge into the question. You have been doing some amazing mahi in Aotearoa regarding migrant pathways and residency campaigning and obviously co-founding Duality. Yes, my first question is, what got you into advocacy work?
In terms of advocacy work, it started off maybe, just with the friends that I had around me.
Yeah.
It may have oddly started with kiwi burn.
Ooh.
So I don't know if you know.
No, let's hear a little bit about it.
So, it is a festival that is almost Aotearoa's version of Burning Man.
Right, okay.
And there was, I got pulled into it by a dear friend, Sandini. Shout out to Sandini. And then there was this camp, called BIPOC Camp. And it was like a festival environment, but all of a sudden we had our own special space for BIPOC people.
Nice.
And all of a sudden you're within the space surrounded by people who are about this kaupapa, like different kaupapa that's grounded in the same way.
Right.
And it really opened my eyes in terms of just being part of that community. And then once they got involved in, say, things like Protect Putiki, originally I just went there to deliver food.
Right.
Just to support. Yeah. I was like, I'll come through. I'll get some kai. And then when you're witnessing firsthand what's going on, then naturally somehow I just got involved.
Right.
It just snowballed from there.
Yeah, ripple effect vibes.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
It'd be about 2020.
Oh yeah, COVID year?
COVID year. I think COVID year was a massive year for kind of, trying different things in terms of, say, that was the start of Duality because we were all, stuck within lockdown.
Yeah. So you're stuck at home.
And then all of a sudden there was some messages flying about of Taraka kind of messaged like a little group of us about this concept.
Yeah.
And then we were like, well, hang on, before we start off with anything, maybe we should do some research. So that kind of kicked off the process of interviewing 100 Lankans who grew up in Aotearoa.
Yeah.
And we, did the whole digital post-it thing and theming it all up.
Love that though.
Yeah. And then seeing the certain themes that a lot of our people that we interviewed had, and then trying to design events and I guess workshops directly related to that feedback.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Duality. For those unfamiliar with Duality, could you tell us a little bit about the mahi that you guys do, and I guess not necessarily the mission statement, but what's the purpose and what's the big driver in actually co-founding Duality?
Yeah, it originally started off as a way of, so it was Taraka who went over to Sri Lanka and was doing work in Sri Lanka and said, it would be great to have a program of us as Lankans within Aotearoa to go and work in Sri Lanka and have that bridge. But then after we did the research, we found that there was actually something a little bit deeper that we did need to explore and work through. Which was, connection to culture. And then as we kind of went through this process, it was like, okay, this duality of whakapapa that we have within us, right? So it's like, how do you honor the whakapapa of our bloodlines as well as the whakapapa of the whenua that raised us, essentially?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the grounding concept of duality, and then how we move forward from there.
Makes sense with the name.
Yeah.
I kind of get where you guys got that from. No, that's so awesome. I did look at all the digital post-it notes, and I thought some of them were so awesome and just so relatable for a lot of people that I guess come from immigrant backgrounds, and also I guess face those duality concerns that you kind of just intrinsically do find yourself in when you're growing up in a country that differs to your homeland, or your parents' homeland, I guess, for those of us who never actually got to live back home. Why do you think it is so important for communities to have organisations like Duality, and who is it specifically catering to, do you think?
In terms of who it's catering to, because when we come into a country, we understand, the assimilation pressure that's put on us. So, we go through this journey, we kind of understand what needs to be done, right? We need to focus on our studies, maybe, cater ourselves to the dominant environment around us, which is the Pākehā dominant framework, essentially. And, you go through this process subconsciously without perhaps reflecting or having that space to look at, well, hang on, what's actually happening here? Because then you go down like past university, past work, and then you might feel a little bit, something might be missing in terms of, say, and then I know for a lot of us, it was like, well, hang on, there's actually another element within us that we haven't tapped into.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? There is a whole group of us who are longing for this connection, and how do we facilitate and showcase that it is possible?
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think without, I guess, pioneer organisations like Duality, people kind of get stuck in a loop of, wait, how do I incorporate it into my life when it's not actually a tangible thing I can see in front of me?
Exactly. And it's just, it's about a continuous process of showcasing what's possible.
Yeah. I think a big question kind of follows through with that is a lot of the second generation immigrant children who kind of come here and were born here and raised here and only know, I guess, growing up in New Zealand, Aotearoa, they find quite a disconnect. I think one of the post-it notes said they struggle with seeking advice from parents because they've both lived such different lives. And it's quite hard to ask advice from someone like your mum or dad that actually didn't grow up here. So growing up here is a completely different experience for you than it was for your parents. How do you think Duality kind of works, or in your experience in general? How do you close that gap between the generations?
Yeah, I think the first step is like honouring the journeys that our parents went on, because sometimes it's very easy to be frustrated or find ourselves distancing, when the reality is when they came here, what they must have gone through, and those experiences must have been horrific.
Yeah.
And you do hear remnants of it. So I do remember, if you're going for community dinners, you can just hear the uncles and aunties talk. And you can like hear remnants of, these experiences like within their work. I remember that my mum would come home from work and then, just talk about some of the frustrations or the experiences with their managers.
Absolutely.
And then, but they're only sharing like a little speck.
I know, because they also do this thing where they have to protect their children, right? Which is a hard line to balance, because they want to protect you, but at the same time it's kind of sheltering you from actually what they're facing, which is so out of love all the time. Like, it's out of love, but you don't realize the gravity of it as a kid.
Yeah. And like you said, the lived experiences and what we navigate are so different, but they're still grounded in the same things.
Same foundation, hey?
So therefore, I think for me, there was an element of, there's got to be that balance of honouring that foundation that's been provided to you through that struggle. However, with Duality, it's about not living for those expectations, but actually just thinking for the generations coming afterwards. Right. So it's like, there is that responsibility to honor what's been provided. But you cannot live and structure your life through those expectations. You've got to do that mahi of thinking of the next generations and what needs to be provided for them.
It's also a different context as well. Like, the lessons I think that immigrant kids get from their parents are amazing, and they're so core to who we are as people, but you have to apply those teachings in a completely different context, which is quite difficult. And I think, they're
silent lessons.
Yeah, it is.
It's like nothing's that explicit.
Yeah.
It's just a demonstration. So, the way they would be so hospitable.
Yeah.
The way that they would kind of just go about their business. It is about being able to observe that.
Yeah.
Because it's, I don't know about, other relationships with parents, but I know that, it's not like a sit down, I'm going to talk you through,
Yeah. The ABC.
No, it's not like that.
It's a lot less low key. Yeah, more low key, hey?
Yeah, it's more like you can kind of just observe the hard work. You can observe the connections. You can observe how they go about their business.
Their love languages are different, hey?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, it's a lot of acts of service.
Yes, that's what it
right?
is. That's all, a lot of acts of service.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that as well. Like, it's quite prominent in Middle Eastern culture, especially like food is a big love language.
Yeah.
Right, same with you guys.
So say you might get like the most horrific growling or like beating of your life, but then all of a sudden there's this plate of like maybe like chopped up fruit.
Like, I was going to say
passed over to you. You're just like,
love language.
Oh yeah, that's how we're doing it. Okay.
Yeah. Like I have 2 younger sisters as well, and we're all at uni right now. So like exam season is a stressful time at my house.
Yeah.
And my mum is trying to like navigate not getting 3 like girls, I was going to say teenage girls, but we're not teenagers anymore, but 3 girls being like, Mum, like leave us alone. So she just does the little knock on our door, and then the plate of fruit just ends up
comes out. Yeah.
So real.
The tea,
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's funny because it's like when you get a certain age, you're just like doing it yourself. You're like,
Yeah, I know.
wait a minute.
Hold on. When did this change?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. The day that I cut up like an apple for my mum is going to be revolutionary. Mum, I promise I'll do it for you. Oh, awesome. I guess another love language in a way, or just lesson, like you said, silent lesson learning thing from our elders is storytelling. I think you guys talked a lot about it on the website when I was reading it. It's a big focus for duality. And I think it's really similar with a lot of immigrant families because you're so distant from the homeland. Culture is kept alive through those stories. How do you think that method of, I guess, teachings could be incorporated into professional realms? Because for me personally, I've realized that a lot of storytelling is how I learn and how I understand things because it's got that personal connection. And reading things is fantastic, but you don't get that translation of emotion or understanding that you do with storytelling. So I guess, what do you think about storytelling and its power?
Yeah, so for me, growing up, it was about sitting to the side and kind of hearing, those conversations, those stories of, the amazing things that perhaps like, your aunties and uncles did back in the day.
Yeah.
Like things that we perhaps take for granted now, they had to really, fight for essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I remember, my granddad on my mum's side, his sisters, having to marry in secret and having to, literally like take a ship out. And like, those kind of stories are them breaking those barriers.
Absolutely.
And really paving that path for what we enjoy today.
Yeah.
And so it starts like that, you're hearing these things and you're like, whoa, that's wild. And yet why are you coming at me for like this one feels like the smallest thing?
Yeah, I know. Like, what are the expectations?
But you're right, like, the power of like storytelling and how you're absorbing it through the slide. In terms of from a professional level, as we're going through our journeys career-wise, it is that same absorbing element to it where, you're seeing people who have gone through it.
Yeah.
And just being able to hear kind of like how it was back in those days. And especially when it comes to intersections, of identity. So hearing the barriers that have been broken through that perspective intergenerationally is, I feel, really powerful.
Oh, that's awesome. And I guess Duality focuses on that a lot because even as, the children of immigrants or having immigrated here, you have 2 different sides of the coin in terms of perspective and how you see things. I guess in one lens is culturally accepted, and then in the second culture that you're living in, it's not as expected. How have you found navigating both sides of, I guess, your upbringing and your culture and your parents' culture?
Yeah, in terms of like what's considered culture.
Yeah.
So, with a lot of nation states that have gone through colonialism, there's the Victorian ethics overlay that I feel have almost dulled out a lot of our culture. So it feels like we're kind of going through a transition perhaps out of that.
Right, yeah.
And that's been, a battle essentially, because you kind of observe, oh, okay, this is what's acceptable, but then as you perhaps learn more, get a little bit more context, you're like, wait a minute, hang on, like, is it? Because what I'm starting to piece together now is actually, no, this is from this place here.
Yeah,
That's
like,
not actually
that
from
place.
Yeah. So being able to perhaps be more empowered by learning more of the history has really helped me in almost being more comfortable in rebellion.
Right. Okay. Could you delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, because initially, you grow up saying, do exactly as your parents do.
Yeah.
Like any kind of deviation from that is a huge no-no.
Yeah.
And then you piece together, stories of, say, from your grandparents' generation that, broke massive barriers. And then maybe understanding more of the context of your own whenua and your bloodlines and everything that has kind of happened within that history.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it provides you more context of, wait, hang on, what is now the navigation forward? What feels right?
Yeah.
Given that context.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess with duality, you guys explore that quite a bit as well. Recently, what have you guys kind of been delving into and having a look at in terms of bringing the organisation forward? I know that after you guys did all that research, you've actually been putting the research into action. How have you found that? And I guess what's been happening?
Yeah. So it was like, we started off through the research and through services, and then it was this, it's an unfortunate maybe reality where minority, like youth groups grounded in minority identity, perhaps don't come to prominence unless their home country is going through
something.
Through something, and then all of a sudden you're put in this responsibility of speaking out.
Yeah.
And you did not expect that. So then to navigate that as a team was a massive journey. So it felt like, there'd be one incident, then all of a sudden we'd feel a certain responsibility to put something out.
Yeah.
And then you have to follow it up, and then mental health workshops. And then there was this huge journey we went on when Sri Lanka went through quite a traumatic period last year.
Right.
And then things that we were attempting to have discourse on that we felt were important. I think it takes a toll.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially I think when the onus is on you, especially because you're the ones kind of going through it and going through the emotions and having to go out of your way to find the resources. And that's actually emotional labor that a lot of people don't understand and don't see. And so I think the people that don't know or aren't actually as aware have to proactively want to learn, as opposed to having you guys, have the onus of sharing the resources and pushing that information out, because obviously you want to share that because that's the emotional toll that you're facing right now. But actually, that's just double the work as well. So I think people should actually also proactively want to learn. Have you found that a bit hard in terms of being, I guess, poster people?
Yeah, because sometimes what we may be putting out there is uncomfortable.
Right.
Or maybe seen in a certain way. And of course, minority communities aren't homogenous.
No.
We have differing opinions. There's minority within minorities.
Yeah.
There's histories within that context. And navigating that and taking on all that complexity is difficult. And a lot of people come at you with all their opinions.
Yeah.
You'll get phone calls, you get messages, you get all sorts.
All the aunties
All
calling.
the aunties is like, I know, do you have to? I'm just like... I'm like, yes.
Yes, I actually do. I think that's also interesting because there's also like a generational difference in terms of how people talk about things. So I feel like duality is quite awesome because it's got quite a modern lens and modern take on how things should be communicated to a lot of people. How did you guys navigate using social media as a way to communicate things about your community?
Yeah, it was certainly when, say, something happened and we felt a responsibility to communicate something, it was just like putting ourselves within what we've experienced in the past. So we knew that within those dinner tables, there might be some problematic conversations coming up.
Right.
How do we provide, I guess, a certain level of, not, I guess, support?
Yeah.
Because it's really tough within those dinner tables to speak out against.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
You have to respect your elders, so you want to be mindful,
Yeah. So it's like, no, like, you're not alone in this.
Right.
And there are others going through it. And once we just put that kind of messaging out there, we found that, it actually resonated with a lot.
Nice.
And it was just about empowering, I guess, us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To be able to speak out. And as we gained momentum and more of a platform, then, all of a sudden those uncles and aunts who perhaps were
a bit hesitant,
were all of a sudden like, okay.
I understand now.
Right, yeah.
I feel like communication's a big thing because you have this fear of the unknown. I feel like in everything sometimes where people are a bit hesitant to delve into things that they're not aware of or they don't understand. So I feel like Duality's been awesome in actually educating people and making it more accessible, which is awesome as well. I was going to ask, have you found that the community at large has actually been quite receptive to it?
Yeah, so when we went through the journey of, all of a sudden petitioning, New Zealand Foreign Ministry to recognise human rights, the amount of support and signatures that we did gather through that process, I guess, is quite affirming. That, people do, I guess, resonate with the messaging that we're trying to put out there. Yeah. But also it's important to acknowledge that, not everyone did agree with what we were putting out there.
Yeah.
So it was just about navigating that and just being comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to agree with you, but as long as you're grounded in what you feel is right, then just being comfortable and being able to change the discourse through the amount of noise.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys expect to kind of have some not so positive feedback?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? You were prepped for it. Yeah, I guess that's the hard thing as well when you start something new and something that's not been done before as well. It's like you're learning on the job too.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? So I guess, was there any feedback that you kind of took on board and you were like, oh, okay, maybe they're actually right and we should change things?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was about understanding the capacity of the team in terms of advocacy.
Right.
So say there's different aspects of it in terms of, actually there is services in terms of connection to whakapapa, and then there's the advocacy side, and understanding like within the team, advocacy is important, but there are elements to this kaupapa as well, because the continuous advocacy can be quite draining.
Absolutely.
So therefore, just for me, it was just being mindful of that capacity and just being able to kind of, maybe just tailor it a little bit more to a little bit more of like a healing journey.
Right. Yeah. And self-care is a bit of a hard thing to discuss with a lot of, I guess, immigrant families, in the sense they come here and they feel like they have to prove something, right? So it's hard work.
It's hard work. Yeah.
It is hard work. And so the notion of self-care sometimes gets swept under the rug. Do you think that's something that Duality might put a lot more focus on?
Absolutely. Just because I think through our own process, it was perhaps something that we did need to take a bit more attention to. So in terms of how we tailor our work going forward, just being a lot slower about it, to be honest. Yeah. There's no rush with this. You can get into this rhythm of like constantly thinking you have to do.
Yeah.
But the reality is our own lived experiences and how we're connecting as a group and how we're growing as a group is part of that journey as well. I think because one of the most rewarding aspects of Duality was seeing the people who are core members kind of flourishing in other leadership roles, and just providing space for that. That's really, really important. That you're able to just facilitate journeys as opposed to just kind of saying, no, it's about da.
Oh, that's awesome. I think as well, you have to realize a lot of this work is like volunteer work. Like people are doing this because they love it, not because they're getting paid to do it. So passion projects also sometimes are quite draining because you actually have to juggle everything else. Have you kind of learnt a lot from that process from the beginning of, I guess, Duality to now, how that's kind of changed?
I think like a lot of pressure that I felt was that, look, I know a lot of, their parents.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I know how you operate.
So it's that responsibility of, being able to cater to their futures, like I've got to be mindful of, their own futures as well.
Priorities. Yeah.
Advocacy and everything along those lines is important, but when you have a responsibility to their futures, it's about balance as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that for me was just understanding that element to it.
And once you kind of get your head around that, it's so helpful in terms of how you move forward and how you can give parts of yourself to those different causes, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome.
Because you'll naturally see like the pathways that they're going towards.
Yeah.
And then being able to kind of just like support in your own way is probably the most important part.
Yeah, it's just understanding how people work. That's awesome. And it's not something you can understand if you've never done anything like that before, right?
Yeah, you only like when you're in it and you're like, oh, okay.
Lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I guess to start rounding it off, what advice do you have for second generation kids or immigrant children who struggle to balance their identities and struggle to navigate that journey?
Yeah, I know for myself it was being more ingrained within the Te Ao Māori worldview. So when I spent a weekend in Marae out at Orake with Ngāti Whatua, it was a real life-changing experience,
right,
because it provides you that lens outside of, I guess, an environment that you didn't know was quite hostile towards your own identity, but it is.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're within this grounded environment that actually encourages you to be more connected within your identity, connected within your the natural elements around you, as well as the whenua that you have connections to. So for me, that was a life-changing moment for me. So for second generation, I'd say, deep dive into those concepts.
Yeah. Especially being born here,
Exactly.
you owe it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon here. It has been absolutely amazing, and we wish you all the best with all the amazing ventures that you're doing, and we can't wait to see more of it as well. You're doing some amazing work, and so I think we'll follow you on all your socials, and everyone check Duality out. Yeah. Shameless plugs. Yeah, no, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. No, thank you for having me. Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora. Awesome. Where can people find out about Duality?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is on our Instagram. So that's predominantly where a lot of our comms come from.
Yeah.
So for us, Instagram DMs and connecting that way is the easiest way for us to kind of get back at you and be able to communicate out what's coming up.
Awesome. Everyone check that out. Thank you so much, Suveen.
Appreciate it.